Okay, now I'd like to ask you guys questions about COVID-19. From your perspective, how has COVID-19 affected day-to-day working life in manufacturing? For example, there are reports that the number of women leaving the workforce has risen due to the pandemic. Have you noticed this in the industrial space as well? This time, Kathy, why don't we move over to you first?
So my team is all men, so it hasn't. I haven't seen women leaving my team, but definitely, there have been a lot of effects. Women generally have the majority of childcare responsibilities. The wage gap makes more sense for a woman to leave her job to take care of kids, and childcare has just been non-existent for the last year and a half. You can't send kids to daycare when the daycare is closed. So yeah, definitely some huge effects. The nice thing for us here at Inductive Automation, we were already doing some small experiments in work from home before the pandemic, and so we were able to transition seamlessly to a work from home. And now, as a company, we have become a remote first company. So we're going to have some nice long-term effects from this, and we've had very little impact. And a lot of our customers actually have had to ramp up their manufacturing and automation efforts. But definitely, I know in a lot of other fields, there have been some huge effects on women.
Absolutely. And we are lucky to be a remote first company at this point. Makes it a little bit easier. Lo, I know it's not the same everywhere. So how about from your perspective?
Well, I do have women on my team. I'm lucky enough to have some amazing women on my team, and I was able to retain them through the pandemic, which I'm really happy about. I don't work directly in manufacturing, but since I work in the life sciences space, I absolutely see the way manufacturing is changing for us. And some of the changes around digitization that we were working on are now massively accelerated because of the demands that are being put on both us as manufacturers as well as the customers that we have that manufacture too. So I think COVID-19 has changed a lot of the day-to-day working life in manufacturing. And for us, we experience that as a pull for new technologies and new digital solutions, which is really exciting for my team.
Oh, definitely. And it's great to hear you were able to retain all of them throughout this whole experience too. Shay, going over to you next.
Sure, yeah. So I think my team, because we largely did a lot of go-to meetings to meet with customers directly, we would travel some to go to conferences and that sort of thing. Transitioning to working fully from home really wasn't a big deal for our team. I do work with, there's another woman on my team and she stayed and I'm glad. I don't think we've really, as a company, seen at least a large exodus of women that I can think of. I know that it's definitely impacted other spaces, maybe more specifically, especially maybe more plant engineers and things of that nature. In general, I think the biggest kind of takeaway I've seen from COVID-19 is just the ability to be very flexible and kind of jump into whatever needs to be done and pivot as necessary. Things in terms of customer requirements and things that customers were looking to accomplish did greatly change, I'd say, during COVID. It's starting to shift back to what I saw pre-COVID. But during COVID, there was a big push to be able to monitor resources remotely and kind of take advantage of technologies and of that nature. And so that's what, for a long time, a lot of my calls were oriented around, a big push on security as well. But in terms of the day-to-day, I think that for the most part, things have stayed pretty much the same from my view.
That's great to hear. Stephanie, I know you might have a little bit of a broader viewpoint on this topic, so let's go over to you next.
Yeah, and I apologize. The great thing about a live event is that there's background noise sometimes, so there's a giant lawnmower in the background. Sorry about that. So yes, the impact of COVID. So first of all, the pandemic erased about 1.4 million U.S. manufacturing jobs, according to Deloitte. And executives say it's about 36% harder to find talent now than it was a couple of years ago. And yes, the findings are that more women left the workforce as a result of the pandemic. They were more likely to be let go or furloughed, and unfortunately, a lot of them are not coming back. This has really derailed their career, and they're citing childcare issues and the lack of flexibility. So On the flip side, the COVID-19 experience taught us that we can be very productive in a flexible work environment. And as a result, organizations are reevaluating this hybrid work environment. I just spoke to a general manager at a manufacturing company yesterday, and he's putting out a survey to his workforce asking them how they want to work. Now, of course, you can't accommodate everybody, but it's a good sign that people are willing to balance and change the way they work. I think companies, as a result of the pandemic, are realizing that they need to be empathetic to individual needs. So the other thing is they need to be mindful about who is in the workforce. The younger generation, a lot of times, are not concerned about that higher salary. They want work-life balance. They are socially focused. They care about the earth and sustainability. So know who you're talking to when you're bringing folks back. So I guess the bottom line is organizations really do need to rethink the way that they work.
Definitely. That flexibility comes in handy when it comes to the recruitment and retaining people as well. So back to the crisis, have you learned any lessons from going through COVID-19 that could help you, your business, or industry overall into the future? Lo, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, I feel like I know my team a lot better. I've met their pets, I've met their kids, all their kids, the interns. And I've learned from all of them as I've watched. So we've all been fighting our own battles in this larger war, and each person on my team had their own kind of unique flavor of getting through the crisis. And I've just been so impressed with their resilience. And I think the struggle going forward, we all came together and we all figured out how to work remotely. We solved all of these problems. The struggle going forward is maintaining that close-knit feeling when the crisis is gone. And that's something that I'm working with my team on now. How do we harness what I know that they are all capable of, and think about how to move past it, because we've seen such a great capacity. Now the other thing that I've noticed is everybody is working way too hard. So when you remove that line between work and life, it becomes kind of a mental health challenge. So I think while I want to capture that enthusiasm and move that forward and harness that, I also want people to step away from their computer, to take time off, and to really think about who they are as a person outside of work. So yeah, I feel like I've learned a ton about humanity and about what we're trying to do as a team going through this crisis with my team.
Well, your team has a great boss to lead the way. All right, let's go to Shay.
Yeah, I love what Lo just said. I think that finding the balance can be a little difficult, especially if you're working on something that's exciting or feels very important. It can be time to log off, and it can feel like, oh, just one more hour or maybe 2 more hours, or yeah, I'll start early tomorrow. I'm right here. I'm right next to my computer, so it's easy. And before you know it, you've been doing that for several months, and it can start to run its course, definitely. So I think that's a really valid point, that it's important to make sure that you're finding the boundary there. We have, I think, across the board, see folks be extremely productive and still, get the important work done that needs to be done. But we need to be taking care of ourselves as well. And so I think I've definitely learned the value of being able to be flexible, but also I've found that boundaries are just as important, if not more important. And that's actually something that I personally am working on more, keeping better track of, okay, if I already have, worked quite a bit of extra hours, then yeah, on Friday, we're going to log off after 8 hours and we're going to go to the gym or take a walk or something, rather than just adding that couple more hours, because it's very easy to do. So yeah, for me, I think realizing that boundaries are important too is one of my biggest takeaways.
For sure. Let's move over to Stephanie. What lessons have you learned during the crisis?
Well, I want to echo what Shay just said. I mean, you have to have boundaries. When you're working at home, everything just comes, gets merged together, and you're checking email at 2 in the morning. So you need to learn how to turn off your phone. And that's actually something that's hard to do, but I'm trying to, especially when you go to bed, turn off your phone. It's usually sitting right there on the nightstand. You got to turn it off, and I'm learning how to make sure that I'm not looking at my work email until the next day. But I'm just reflecting on an interview I had with Jan Tharp, who's the CEO of Bumblebee Seafoods, and she was talking about leading through crisis. And she had to lead through a pandemic, but she stepped into the role after there was a major corporate crisis. There was a little bit of a shakeup at the company. And I think the most important thing is you have to be transparent. Management has to be transparent with their employees, and they have to keep open lines of communication, and they have to acknowledge, yes, we have a problem, and here are the things that we can do to fix it. And mental health is a huge issue these days. So I think making sure that human resources departments are involved and understanding that there needs to be new programs maybe in place. So I think the bottom line, though, is you've got to have transparency at the executive level, and you have to communicate with your team.
Great points, definitely. Kathy, how about you?
I'll echo the mental health and boundaries theme. My team has just been so amazing during the pandemic and so productive. And my biggest challenge with them always is reminding them, it's your brain that's important, not sitting in your chair looking at a computer. And to keep your brain healthy, I want you all to take an hour off, go for a walk, take an afternoon off, take a day off, take a week off. The code will still be here when you get back. But I really want you rested and refreshed. And it is so easy to just think, well, I'm at home anyway, I may as well be working. But no, you need those mental breaks, and it's super important to take them.
Absolutely. I think we were all just joking about, seeing the different set of four walls now that you're in the office just for today, Kathy. And so mixing it up a little bit, setting some boundaries, all of those are great advice and perspectives.